Hello everybody, welcome back to Assassin's Creed Ranked. I'm Raven and I got Lark here with me, and I know that we just recently did Assassin's Creed, but it didn't take me long to play through Assassin's Creed 2 so that we could talk about this game and just how awesome it is. I think it's no secret that this one was probably going to make a top tier ranking, but let's talk about what all it had to offer. And just like last time, we're grading it based on 4 criteria, and each of those individual criteria will get their own grade, and then we'll take the average of those 4 grades and give it the tier it deserves. And those criteria are the story, the gameplay, the history, and the characters. So let's get started just like we did last time with story. So since I played it, Lark, I'll take the lead on this one, and then you'll fill in. Yeah, okay, awesome. So, story-wise, the story essentially, it takes place in the Renaissance Italy, starting off in Florence, or Firenze as they call it, and it follows the story of Ezio Auditore da Firenze, an actual person, believe it or not, who gradually grows into an assassin over the course of the game, because it turns out he comes from a family of assassins. He doesn't realize this, because the whole order of assassins that we saw with Altair is gone. Now the assassins are much more underground. They're not an open group, neither are the Templars. And the assassins are now kind of this underground organization trying to fight against the underground organization of the Templars. And Ezio had no idea he had a family of assassins until his father and brothers are all killed by the Templars. And I think that, first of all, that's brilliant. But what I love most about it is it tells a story of Ezio growing to become an assassin throughout the course of the story. Unlike Altair, who already was an assassin, Ezio has to learn the creed, has to learn the skills, has to learn basically what he believes in. He has to form his own conclusions. But what I like about this is how it is juxtaposed beside Desmond. Desmond professes to know all he needs to about the creed, but in reality, he knows next to nothing. And in Desmond's story, Desmond is taken away from Abstergo to actually meet the modern-day assassins, and through that, he's put back into the Animus, but along the way is learning that there's far more to the fight than he thought before. It's not just assassins and Templars. There's something else brewing underneath. But overall, the story I felt was well-paced, well thought out. Everything you do in-game feels like it's very natural, I would say. I mean, Lark, what do you think?
I'd say overall the story is, it knocks it out of the park.
Yeah, for sure.
Just because, it's a standard story, story of revenge, but it doesn't just stick to revenge. Like, the revenge evolves into something else. It's like an understanding that I'm not doing this just because I want some revenge. I'm doing this because it needs to be done.
Right. There's especially a moment in the game that I really like. At first, what he wants to do is, after his parents are killed, he wants revenge by killing the person directly involved, Uberto Alberti. After he kills him, he just wants to get his family out of the city. So he does, and then he meets up with his uncle Mario, who teaches him the skills he needs to be an assassin, but even then, he still doesn't really want to take the fight to the Templars. He just wants to get his family to safety.
We sail for Spain in 3 days.
But Nipote, I have given you these skills that you might be better prepared to strike against our enemies.
And if they find me, I will.
You want to leave Ezio? To throw away everything your father fought and died for?
Until Mario kind of drags him along to take care of one of the Templars, and as he does, Ezio decides, okay, you know what? I'm going to carry on my father's work. I think that there really is a problem going down, and it'll help me find out more about the conspiracy. But then as you get into, Venice, it doesn't even have to do with revenge anymore. He's doing it because this is what I've started. This is what I'm going to finish. And I kind of like that,
Well, there's always an element of revenge still to it, because they did have a loose connection. But he's just this still needs to happen, which I appreciate. Not to mention, unlike in the first game, which I still think is an okay story, but in this one, the story flows a lot better, since it's not the Templars just trying to jump forward to one specific event. These guys are actually trying to flow through it. And also, we'll get to more with the characterization and stuff, but it's just enjoyable to watch. If any of the assassin stories deserve to be made into a movie, I would argue it would be Ezio.
Oh, for sure. Because the thing I liked about Ezio's story, especially in Assassin's Creed 2, is it felt like a linear plot. It felt like it starts off with Ezio as an immature little brat, grows into him being a master assassin, which I thought was very solid.
Yeah, well, the story's good because Ubisoft decided to give him 2 more installments after this.
Yeah, for sure. It was very popular. But so I gave the story an S because really I don't think you could have improved on it. I thought it was incredibly well written.
I mean, it's really good, and not to mention when you look at it from the even side missions, they don't detract from the story, they don't break off from it.
Right.
It's all in all, I would agree. I think this is an
nothing was done in vain. Everything felt like it mattered, and nothing felt forced. Like some stories in Assassin's Creed, I feel like they shove in side missions or things just to say, "Oh, by the way, here's the thing you have to do." I think the only way you could call it force in that sense would be like the Templar missions or the things where you have to go through those crypts to get pieces of Altair's armor. But that's not really story based. That's more gameplay progression based, which we're about to get into. So let's talk. First, before we get to gameplay, let's talk history. And this is going to be more your bread and butter because Renaissance Italy is not my strong suit. But I think, based on what I know, with only a few minor hiccups, I think they got a lot historically accurate. What would you say?
I would argue yes, for the most part, everything's historically accurate. I mean, if there was an Auditore family, I doubt they were assassins.
Right.
But, I mean, it may have been an Ezio Auditore running around. We don't have any historical record of him because typically most minor nobles don't make a lot of splash in the historical record. But, the Pazzis, the Medici, the Barbaragos, they're all real families. In fact,
The Borgias,
they were a real family. And, the Pazzis and the Medici are still around today. They don't have near the same prominence they do. I think the Medici still have their hands on some wealth, though. But it is interesting to see these families actually brought to life, because what's interesting about this game is it actually started to intrigue historians with the idea of, history and being taught through video games. Because, sure, before Assassin's Creed, history was very seldom taken out of the strategy sphere. It was mainly just used as a setting and nothing else. But in Assassin's Creed 2, what I really like is not only do they have the setting in history, they actually have an index of things oh, you're a little confused about this? Well, here's a little blurb explained by Sean Hastings, one of the other assassins.
We'll get to him.
Yeah, we'll get to him in a moment. But it's useful because I wish they had that in Assassin's Creed 1. So when you're running around Acre, well, what is this? When you're running around Jerusalem, well, what is this? Because
actually, that's something I want to build up on. One thing that I want to say is a big improvement on Assassin's Creed 2 from Assassin's Creed is that the world felt large and vibrant. Unlike Assassin's Creed, where you had basically 4 main locations, Masyaf, Acre, Jerusalem, and Damascus, which all had slight differences, but really, if you weren't told where you were, could you tell the difference between Damascus and Jerusalem? Acre was obviously different because it was gray and given the medieval filter. But genuinely, other than those 4 places, they kind of all looked and felt the same, with Florence and Tuscany and Monterezione and Venice. All of it felt so different, so vibrant. It felt very unique. I think they put a lot of effort into making it look as close to accurate as they could.
Well, that's another interesting thing about it in terms of history. Italy at the time of the Renaissance was not a unified entity. It was divided into, particularly in the north, several different city-states.
Yeah, this was during the Italian Wars, I think.
On and off again. And it's kind of interesting. The Italian peninsula before Rome started off as a bunch of different city-states and regions squabbling with each other, and by golly, they went back to square one.
In fact, I think Ezio brought that up when he mentioned, isn't Monterezione an enemy of Florence?
Yeah, and they go we can lose track of whether we're friends or enemies. And I'm going, that's fairly accurate for the time period. What's interesting about this is the game that actually got me and several other people interested in not only Renaissance history, but Italian history, because before this game came out, the average person's concept of the Renaissance was that's when the Ninja Turtle painters were around, right?
Right, and we meet one.
You do meet one, and that's very interesting. Now, I do have to address Leonardo da Vinci. He did not actually make a lot of the crazy stuff you will see here, and then we'll get to Brotherhood later, but the flying machine.
What is this thing?
Eh?
It looks like a giant bat.
Oh, nothing. Just an idea I've been working on. I could not leave it behind.
What is it for?
Well, I shouldn't really talk about it. Al diavolo. I can't hold it in anymore. Ezio, I think I figured out how to make a man fly.
he didn't actually make one of those. However, he did draw designs and such for it. So it's almost sort of like, oh, here's a little thing. It's sort of, it's like, it's not technically historically accurate, but it's historically inspired.
Well,
it's enough to be believable.
For sure. But I think that if I had to say one thing that I didn't like historically about this is the introduction of the Isu.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's actually my biggest beef with the game.
Well, I think my biggest problem with the game, genuinely, is the introduction of the Isu. I think that was Assassin's Creed's biggest mistake. And we can talk about this more in another video, I think, but the Isu, I think, were Assassin's Creed's biggest mistake.
I would agree, because it even starts at the beginning, and we didn't take this off of for story, primarily because it only appears at the beginning and at the end of the game. If you blink, you'll kind of forget it happens.
Right.
But the idea is like in Assassin's Creed 1, we mentioned that this set of an underground war between two societies, the Templars and the Assassins, one fighting for order and authoritarianism, the other fighting for freedom and sort of a more libertarian style mindset of people being freedom of choice and accepting some of the consequences that come along with that. And those two fighting an underground war for civilization is already a compelling enough plot as it is. But for some reason, somebody at Ubisoft said, that's not gripping enough. We need to make the next enemy the sun.
Well, we'll get to that more when we get to Brotherhood and Revelation, but we'll save that. I think my problem with the Isu is they're trying to explain where the Pieces of Eden came from, and I didn't want to know. Maybe some people did, but I didn't want to know where the Pieces of Eden came from.
It's kind of like the...
Well, take for example the Secret of NIMH, right? In the Secret of NIMH, you had rats that could talk, but they explained that through science and nature and all that kind of stuff. And you had this amulet, which was never explained where it came from or how it quite worked, but it had magical properties. We didn't need an explanation as to where it came from. There was kind of this acceptance of the supernatural, this acceptance of the unknown, you know? And I felt like that was kind of where the Piece of Eden sat. This acceptance that this is something we can't fully understand or comprehend. I mean, that's where we get a lot of the basics for ancient religions, you know? We can't fully comprehend or explain this, therefore we build religions around it, and that's what Al-Muhalim said, you know? We can't explain it, but it is the source of so many belief systems and superstitions. And that's kind of what I wanted this to be. But now we've established the Isu, who are the progenitors of it, and now that you've opened that can of worms, well, now you better explain it. And boy, did they not explain it well.
Well, the thing is, they explained it, it's just... The problem is, the Piece of Eden worked better as sort of mysterious entity, a sort of we don't understand. A good example, a good parallel is look at the Halo games.
Yeah.
Back when you had the Forerunners and the Precursors, it kind of felt better when they were sort of just an unknown entity. Then once you started to learn more and more about the Forerunners, they started to lose a bit of that interesting edge to them, because sometimes knowing less can add more, because there's theory, there's it can leave things up to one's own interpretation.
Right, less can be more, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And it doesn't get terrible with a few of the games afterwards, but once we start getting into the later games, and once they actually start getting branded the name Isu, I start getting more and more irritated. Particularly when we get to 3, I have a long rant about the Isu I'm going to go on, but...
Well, we'll save that for then, because we're kind of getting off topic.
Indeed.
Let's get back to the topic. Okay, so next subject matter is gameplay. Okay, so I gave... we should say for history, I gave it an A tier.
Yes.
I did give it an A tier, only because the Isu kind of took it down a notch for me, but...
The Isu did kind of take it down, but
We'll leave it alone. We've gone on enough about history.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so gameplay. I gave that an S tier. Okay, so while talking about the gameplay, climbing and the combat mechanics, they've improved greatly. Ezio movements feel more crisp and controllable than Altair's in a lot of areas. There are still some areas I guess they could improve on, especially as opposed to later games. Like combat itself, they've altered combat a good deal. But I still feel like a lot of it relies on waiting for counter kills and then having opponents make the first move. Whereas I feel like there should be better flow, and we see that in Brotherhood, but we'll get to that. The health system got much better because instead of in the first game, if you got injured, you had to just go hide somewhere and wait for synchronization to pick back up. Here you have medicine, so if you're stuck in the middle of a fight and you've got some medicine, you can keep yourself in a lot easier. But there are lots of other new things. They add shops in this game to purchase weapons, armors, dyes, and pouches. Yes, Assassin's Creed went capitalist. I'm not joking, because
And that's not a bad thing.
Well, one thing that they started in this is the homestead thing. And a lot of other Assassin's Creed games would pick this up, where basically Monteriggioni becomes your homestead, and your job is to help renovate and rebuild Monteriggioni by reopening shops, reopening certain aspects of the city, fixing up old buildings, and in doing so, you increase the revenue that the city brings in, and you take in that revenue as the landowner. It's like teaching basic economics, but the nice thing is, it's simple. It's easy to understand. Like, you help renovate and rebuild this using your money, you will make money back over time, and if you come to collect that money, you will be able to spend it on new items, new gear, new armor, new swords.
Since someone decided we're going to stay here, Zio Mario suggested we try and find the money to repair the villa. Problem is, there isn't any.
I bet I can bring in some money.
Oh, great. More work for me. Well, benissimo. If you start paying for improvements to the town, I'll keep track of them in this book. And since I have nothing better to do, I'll also make note of any objects you bring in from the outside. If you actually get this place up and running, travelers might visit and spend money. Although I doubt anyone will want to come this far out of the city. But if they do, I'll keep the money we make in this chest. You're going to have to show up to take it to the bank yourself. Because when it gets full, I'm just going to take the extra cash for myself. Capito?
Dio. Buongiorno. Is there something wrong?
Ser Mario hired me to deal with this mess, but I'm an architetto, not a miracle worker. Without money, I can't fix any of these buildings.
And if someone brought you money?
Then we'd be in business. You must be Ser Ezio. Am I right?
Uncle! I like this architetto!
He gets very observant when he can smell mud.
If you want to fix up this town, I'm going to need it. I have a price list here for new shops and renovations. Just bring me gold, make a choice, and I'll begin at once. If I build you a shop, you, as the landlord, can purchase goods there at lower rates. If you invest more money in the shop, you get an even greater discount. As for renovations, well, you'll be bringing the town and villa back to life. As Ser Mario tells me, that was very important to your great-great-grandfather. Plus, when you buy shops and renovations, you'll be increasing the number of people who visit, causing your income to increase. So, let's take a look, shall we?
New gun. Like, you can collect more weapons. Like, the shops will sell you tons of different kinds of armor, tons of different kinds of weapons, tons of different kinds of ammunition, like throwing knives and bullets. So yes, bullets. We get a mini firearm that is really awesome to use later on in the game. You get two Assassin's Creed Hidden Blades.
You get a poison blade.
You get a poison blade. There's a lot to this. You also get new things like contract events where you can take assassination contracts, race contracts, beat 'em up contracts, racing contracts. You go through crypts and tombs to collect unique rewards. The game allows you to work alongside underground forces, unlike before in Assassin's Creed where
it was just the assassins
and you might be able to blend with monks. You meet other underground groups like the Thieves Guild, who you can hire thieves to help you go and steal from guards to distract them. You can hire mercenaries to go and fight guards for you.
Or just keep them around to help them fight with you.
Yeah, or you can hire courtesans to not only provide you permanent active cover while walking with you constantly, you can send them to go flirt with guards and draw them away for a little while. It is so funny. I swear to God, there's nothing funnier than these guards, these stone-staunch soldiers, standing there all like, we will never move for anything. Send like two girls over there just to swing their hips, and these guys, oh baby, and then they walk away, and literally you'll just kind of slide by them, almost the way you would like trying to get into a car door, and they won't even notice you.
And what I love about this,
these guys need it.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time,
but they are Italian. Hey! I hope Vita Neon is watching this.
He's probably just gonna go, oh, we're gonna have to kill you now.
Yeah. But I know too much.
We are cursed with knowledge. But what's funny about all this, like, it also, like, the blend mechanic, as you brought it, like, you don't just blend with courtesans, you can, like, if you are in you are literally a blade in a crowd.
You don't have to press a button.
Yeah, you don't have to press a button to like try and pretend to be praying. You just move in and you sort of like merge in with the crowd, and you cannot be spotted while you are, say, in that crowd. As long as you are moving along in that same pace and along the same, the guards will not spot you. I liked it. Another thing I really like is also there's a sort of a detection mechanic. Like,
yes.
Not
notoriety
detection.
detection. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, the more crap you do, the more they're going to pay attention to you. But there's a little meter that you can keep to sort of stay on top of it, and you can get rid of your notoriety by tearing down posters, by bribing heralds, and by assassinating witnesses.
Yeah, literally, I love that so much more. Like, it makes things so much easier to handle. It allows you to control how notorious you are, who notices you. It's genuinely, I tell you no lie, I think that this felt like a real sequel. They basically took what they started with and said, let's up the ante in every way possible. This is what made the game feel so fun. I think that's what really brought people back into Assassin's Creed.
Well, yeah, it was like, first, like, Assassin's Creed walked so Assassin's Creed 2 could run, but boy did Assassin's Creed 2 run. Like, every foreseeable thing, or conceivable thing that Assassin's Creed 1 did, Assassin's Creed 2 does it better. I think this is the first and last Assassin's Creed game that will take its predecessor and improve upon every single aspect it provides.
And can we just say that I think the biggest addition they made to this game, like the biggest, the one that was absolutely a game changer, was Ezio apparently took some goddamn swimming lessons. Oh God! You're not following me! Boys, no, what are you doing? You fucking... Follow Ezio to victory!
Brainless content.
Yes, thank you.
Ezio can swim!
Well, you can't be running around Venice and then swimming. Unfortunately, not everyone else has learned how to swim.
Now, if I had to give the gameplay any negative props, if I had to say anything negative about it at all, it is the Subject 16 glyphs. Now, here, let me explain. Basically, the idea is that Subject 16 was this guy before Desmond who Abstergo was using, but he apparently was able to hack their database and leave behind these little images that as you play through the game you may find them, and if you activate them by using Eagle Vision, they will give you these puzzles to solve. And if you solve the puzzles, they open up a series of small video clips that you can combine to show you the true history, the true Isu history, and where it all begins. And as we said before, the Isu kind of annoy us, but that's not what bothers me. As Subject 16's videos keep making clear, as the puzzle you keep going through, he's trying to tie in all these historical events throughout history to try to show how far back the Pieces of Eden have gone, how far back the Templar versus Assassin's Creed thing has gone, and how all these individuals throughout history were secretly just evil. Like, for example, I think the one that got me stunned, like what stunned me, was the implication through a letter from Thomas Edison that Thomas Edison was a Templar, tried to discredit Nikola Tesla to prevent the light bulb from becoming free, and helped Henry Ford and Firestone give the Piece of Eden to Hitler so he could kick off World War II, and Henry Ford being totally okay with it, saying that kind of purge is something Europe could use. And I'm going, okay, look, you want to go on the conspiracy theory that Thomas Edison stole the light bulb from Tesla? That's fine, that's cute, we can go that route. But saying that these three conspirators sat down and said, you know what, I think a madman in Germany could use a Piece of Eden, you know what, I'm going to say that's kind of far-fetched, Ubisoft.
Well, the thing is, Henry Ford did have sympathies to, like, the Third Reich, so that's, and also, Edison did screw over Tesla on occasion. I'm not going to do that, but...
Well, the idea that they were evil Templars seeking to subjugate mankind.
That seems to be, I guess, like, the closer they get to the present, the more it's like, really now? But there are, it's kind of interesting, like, the implications they imply, like, every successful person, like, guess what? The only reason they were successful, they had a Piece of Eden. And I'm just going to go, and then they contradict themselves when we get to Assassin's Creed 3, because George Washington had one, and then we get to Assassin's Creed 3, and it's like, yeah, for like a nanosecond, then he said to go throw this in the ocean, please.
Yeah, they do contradict themselves a lot, which is kind of funny, and sometimes I feel like some of the ways in which they contradict themselves, like, for example, they say that some people had it, but at the same time, they're kind of saying this is how they control people, but some of the people who had it were actually good people. Like, they said George Washington had it. They said Joan of Arc had one. They said Moses had one. they said Jesus had one. They said that I'm like, okay, but these were genuinely good people. Are you trying to imply that they weren't good at all? It's just
no, they were just trying to establish a connection, and it's just like sort of all this like It's hilarious because it does sound like one of those YouTube
Conspiracy theories, yeah,
like,
yeah.
You see, you're all sheeple, and you don't see what's real because you just see what they want you.
It
to
is.
see.
It is kind of cool as a scavenger hunt and
Oh, yeah, it's a
puzzle kind of mechanic.
I like the puzzle and like sort of like putting it together, like putting the pieces together.
but it's the conspiracy theory
like some
part
of the
that
stuff
just-
where it's just like I like. Isn't like Edison's family in the Ford's family still around? You may want to be careful. You might,
I think that's why they open up each game with
Hey, don't sue us.
Don't sue us. Don't sue us. These are fictional. I'm like, yeah, but
Yeah, like the thing is, like I get the hate for Edison, I do, but at the same time, I'm like, was he really a Templar?
I mean, come on. Like, look, was the guy shady? Maybe, but was he really a Templar?
There's actually like a guy, like Alternate History Hub has another channel called Knowledge Hub where his brother breaks down Edison pretty well. It's like he was an inventor until he wasn't, and his businessman side took over.
Well, you could say that about Disney. Like Walt Disney was.
I would say Edison.
Walt Disney was an entertainer. His company took over, and they became.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that like we saw that within Edison's lifetime.
Well, okay, so my point being, this is still about gameplay. I think my issue is, while it is a fun puzzle mechanic and fun scavenger hunt aspect, the things it implies in it are questionable and kind of silly to me. Like, I think the big problem with is, like, kind of like what you said, it could also come off as a little insulting at times. Like, for example, here's what I mean by that. What if, like, for example, they try to imply that the atomic bomb was the creation of the Templars? And my response to that is, you're saying that no one else sat down and thought about the implications of this. It was just Templars saying, you know what, we're going to invent this to control the masses. No one thought maybe this is a necessary evil. No one thought maybe this is a bad idea. Maybe this is a good idea. You're saying it was all just Templars. I feel like that's a little insulting to the real motivations of the real creators. But and that's just one example. But you know what? I'm going to leave that alone. Overall, gameplay-wise, S tier. Definitely S tier. But now let's move on to the last part, because we've been on this for a while. Let's talk characters. So, like last time, we're going to talk about the historical characters, like Ezio and all them, and then we'll go back to Desmond. So, starting with Ezio, I think he's the most beloved assassin in all the franchise. I think everyone loves Ezio. They all remember Ezio, and I think it's for good reason. He has a very enjoyable personality. Learning the world through him is contagious. He starts off as kind of this playboy, but he's got a good heart. He's playful but fun. You spend the first part of the game watching him pick a fight in the street with Vieri de Pazzi over a small insult, then gets into a street brawl, then runs off to go screw his girlfriend, literally, like, that's not hyperbole, that's exactly what he does, and then runs off to do some chores for his family, but it shows that he cares for his family. Like, it's shown that he's not a kid without responsibility, but he's never had to use that responsibility meaningfully until it comes down on him, and then it's shown that he can step up to that. So I liked him. I liked Ezio a lot. And he only gets better, I'd say, with time.
I would argue the same thing. Ezio is by far probably the most famous assassin, because literally anytime like Assassin's Creed makes an appearance in another game, 10 times out of 10, it's Ezio. And I don't know why they always choose the Brotherhood outfit. I found that the weakest of the three outfits.
Probably because they connect it to Cesare, and Cesare is such a memorable villain.
He is a flamboyant. I mean, he's voiced by Dob anyway.
We'll talk about it when we get to Brotherhood.
But the thing is, Ezio is just like, he's such a charismatic figure. He's a likable figure, and you get to see true character progression throughout the game, throughout not just his game but multiple games. Well, he's got a lot of background to build off of. He's relatable. He's enjoyable. He's also flawed to a degree. Right. So all in all, that's not A tier. That's just him on its own. That's S tier characters. But it's not just Ezio. We got a bunch of other characters in here that are a whole blast.
What I like about Ezio, another thing that I'll add real quick, with Altair, if you ever turn the camera around to look at Altair's face, you just see Desmond's face. Mm-hmm. Ezio is clearly his own character.
Well, you can't actually see Desmond's face, like you can see the relation, but
it's different.
It's different enough.
Very different, but they act different. Is my point.
Yeah, like there is a clear, distinct difference here.
I know. I just felt like that was something to bring up.
Yeah, indeed. And
although, can we just admit how stupid it is that if you look at Desmond's face, he's got a scar on his lip, and if you look at Ezio, he gets a scar on his lip from being hit by a rock. You mean to tell me the scar is genetic? Like Desmond got the scar because of his ancestor.
that will be kind of whack that the body just goes like, ah, crap, we had this before, we got fixed.
Because it's in the same spot. It's in the same spot.
I didn't know the bleeding effect was that literal.
I know, right? But anyway.
Oh, for those of you that don't know, the bleeding effect basically means like the more you stay in the Animus, the more you the memories of your ancestors start becoming like
that becomes a point later. But anyway, okay. So next is Leonardo da Vinci. Okay, baller
what a guy!
Baller character. So much fun. flamboyant but still believable, kind of just this fun puppy dog of a human being. He's so entertaining. He's easily the Q of the gang. Like, he's the one who gives Ezio, he's the one who solves the codexes, he gives him his new gear.
Fixes the hidden blade.
It gives him 2 hidden blades, gives him the poison, the bullet, gives him all this stuff. Always willing to help out, but very open to, helping Ezio, even if he doesn't always understand what Ezio's doing, which shows a lot of faith from Leonardo's side.
Ezio, you are still alive.
Look at this place. The past 2 years have been kind to you.
But you are not the same at all, are you?
I was hoping you might be able to help me with something.
Anything for you, my friend. Haha! You found another one! How exciting! This one is tricky to break. Clever in its use of ancient languages. Maybe if I just... Oh! It seems to be a manual of sorts for different assassination techniques.
May I see it?
Wait, what's that? It's not so much a design this time, just a series of sketches. What to make of all this? Of course, and why not? What an inspired idea.
Can you make it for me while I try what's in that manual fragment?
Take it. I'll have my assistant set up some dummies for you.
It's just so cool seeing this major character appear here, and I feel like if you were to show Leonardo da Vinci how he really was, I feel like that was a pretty good representation.
I think if you showed Leonardo, like the actual Leonardo da Vinci, it's like, hey, how would you feel like making gadgets for like an underground fighter for justice? He'd probably go,
it's awesome, right?
yeah. I think he'd be behind that in real life, but not to mention, like, it's just cool to see, because if Leonardo wasn't already your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle and favorite Renaissance painter, he is now.
You also get several other characters that pop up throughout the story, like you get, I mean, of course, how could you forget Mario?
Yes, how could you forget?
He literally opens with a line that Nintendo probably squealed at.
Yeah, if you look carefully, you can see a Nintendo lawyer screaming in the mountaintop in the Apennine Mountains behind him
at this exact moment.
I know you from somewhere.
Don't you recognize me? It's a me, Mario!
But yes, it's just... You can't deny, he's fun. You also got these other characters that pop up along the way. Just all these people that tie into the assassins. Some of them really entertaining and memorable. Some of them you can forget very easily. But each one, you kind of remember. Like, how can you forget La Volpe?
How could you forget Bartolomeo?
Bartolomeo!
And of course, Bianca!
Bartolomeo left such an impact. He's the character we remember every time we play the game.
Yes.
About goddamn time! I don't know if I should kiss you or slap you. Maybe both, just to be safe.
That's quite all right.
Who are you?
I'm Ezio Auditore da Firenze. I'm here to rescue you.
Let's see who winds up rescuing who.
What do you mean?
Down there! Stop them! Bianca! Bianca!
Is everything all right?
What do you think? Look at this place. And poor Bianca. If something's happened to her. Aha! Oh, my darling. Thank God you're all right. Ezio, meet Bianca. Bianca, Ezio.
Charmed.
He is just such a treat to fight with.
Because he's crazy. He's that crazy guy. He's like that crazy uncle you want to go out with, Like, come on, man, let's go party, man. Yes, let's go party. I will get Bianca. You know what? It wouldn't be a party without Bianca. Go get Bianca.
But if he was a penguin from Madagascar, he'd be Rico.
Exactly. He is the guy who would say, kaboom. Yes,
Bartolomeo,
kaboom. Correct.
I love that dude. And not to mention, also, the family makes a pretty good present. Like, it's kind of refreshing, like, hey, there's a character that has a loving family, and only half of them die.
I know. For once, it's not the mom. Hey, Disney, take note.
The mom lives, and there's actually sort of an arc where you have to, like, try and break her out of her shell. You have to collect 100 feathers.
It was kind of dumb. I'm not going to lie.
That is kind of dumb. Psychologically speaking, I don't think that's how that works. So if you were collecting feathers for someone at a mental institution...
You can stop now.
I don't think it's going to work.
Now, Claudia, the younger sister, kind of annoying in this game, but she gets better in later.
But I can also... She's not insufferable, and at the same time...
Yeah, she doesn't come off as bitchy. Like, she comes off as spoiled, but not bitchy.
Yep. And also, I think giving her the responsibility of running Monteriggioni does, like...
that matures her very quickly, and we see that in the next game, but let's leave that alone.
And that's another great part about, like, just the trilogy in general. We see character development beyond just one
But let's
game.
save that for Brotherhood.
I know.
Now let's talk the villains. Here's the thing one thing that I will say cool about this game is that unlike in the last game, Sean, the Templar, will give you like little snippets about each villain you're going after, like little videos about what they've done, who they are.
Emilio Barbarigo, titan of Venetian industry, terror of the underworld. Aided by his powerful family, he cornered the market through smart business practices such as edging out the competition and lobbying the government. He funded the Venetian police force almost single-handedly, keeping the streets safe from crime and his finances tax-free. Emilio claims to be a supporter of the Republic. The problem is, once you own the police force, voting becomes, well, inefficient, as does, opposition.
Kind of showing you who they are, and it's kind of revealed that a lot of them, in fact most of them, are kind of evil bastards. Like, one thing that I really, really like about this game, and we see this become a problem in later Assassin's Creed games, is a lot of the Templars you killed in the first game had good intentions, but were doing it in the wrong way. Here, and in Brotherhood and in Revelation, I'd argue, most of the ones Ezio goes after are kind of evil dicks.
There's no moral quandary. Like, am I doing the right thing?
They're all pretty bad.
It's sometimes like
even if you don't side with the assassins on everything, you still look at these guys and go, "Nope, you're getting a stabbing."
Like, listen, I'm all for like having like a villain that's somewhat relatable and all that. I can get behind that. But it is refreshing just to have, like, there's an evil bastard over there, go get him. And I'm like, all right, boss,
let's go get him. But but I like that. I like that most of the villains, you remember them. I will never forget Francesco. I'll never forget the Barbarigo. I got my Italian mixed up. The Barbarigos, they're very entertaining. Some of their designs are very memorable. And okay, let's say it. The big one. The big one. Rodrigo Borgia.
Rodrigo Borgia, aka the Spaniard. A dark stain on human history, Rodrigo left a trail of blood a mile wide on his quest to unify Italy under the Templar banner. Anyone who opposed him ended up in little pieces inside a sack, or, if he was in a good mood, poisoned. Once he was crowned Pope, Rodrigo, or should I say Alexander VI, used his influence to wage war with any city that held out against the Templars. And then there were the rumoured X-rated atrocities. Hundreds of courtesans brought to the Vatican by the cartload, and the Pope's close friendship with his illegitimate daughter Lucrezia. Oh yeah, and did I mention the killings never stopped? Throughout all his public debauchery, Rodrigo was quietly murdering his enemies behind the scenes, consolidating Templar power for the moment when they would seize control.
Okay, I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Lark, you can disagree with me if you want, but
okay.
Rodrigo Borgia, I would argue, best villain in Assassin's Creed. Best Templar villain in Assassin's Creed.
You will not hear me argue, because he's basically the Emperor Palpatine of the Assassin's
He even
Creed.
looks a bit like Emperor Palpatine, except without the testicle face.
Yeah, and like he's basically said, what if we made Emperor Palpatine handsome again?
Make your Emperor handsome again.
It also doesn't like we've mentioned this in previous, like we mentioned this in our first run through with this, but he looks a little bit like how one of our youth pastor looked growing up.
It's so creepy too. He looks like Bart. He looks like Bart.
Going into Sunday school would always be weird. Like, hey, it's like, what'd you do this time?
Well, here's what I like about Rodrigo. Okay, here's the thing. You always think about this master assassin in the background pulling the strings. It's him. You know it's him. You know he's the one doing it, but it's how he acts. He doesn't. I like the fact that he handles everything so well. And what I mean by that is like this. There's, most leaders, most evil masterminds would usually go like, oh, you failed because you're incompetent. How could you lose to this one stupid boy? How could you lose to this one weakling who has no... He literally, like in the part where in Venice, where the Templars are walking around discussing what's going to happen next, Rodrigo warns them, there's an assassin in the streets, and you need to be very careful with what you do. I feel like I need to involve myself more closely with this so that you don't fail like the Pazzi did. And one of the Barbarigos goes, oh, you don't need to worry about that. The Pazzi were stupid and inept. And then Rodrigo shuts him down. Like saying, no, they weren't useless. They weren't stupid. They were a powerful, venerable family that we supported and liked. They underestimated their enemy, and you are too, and if you keep doing it, you're going to end up dead. He does not underestimate Ezio. He does not treat him as a weakling. He points out we've been at this longer than you, but he doesn't say, oh, just disregard him. My subordinates are just incompetent. He acknowledges we underestimated our enemy. That cost us. Don't you do it again. It's refreshing to see a villain who takes his foes so seriously.
Forgive me, Maestro, but is this not perhaps a tad dangerous for you? Involving yourself so intimately with the minutiae of our plans.
I feel the need to involve myself more directly. The Pazzi disappointed us in Firenze. I pray you will not do the same.
Do not worry this time. The Pazzi were a bunch of foolish...
The Pazzis were a potent and venerable family, reduced to rubble by one young assassin. Do not underestimate this troublesome foe who now haunts your city. Or the same fate will befall the Barbarigo. I want this done promptly.
Yeah. At least that's my position on that.
And also, he's like unlike say Robert de Sauve in the previous game. Like, you see him everywhere. They remind you, this guy. And he doesn't even start as Rodrigo Borgia. He starts as the Spaniard. You just know him as, like, sort of this figure. And then it's like, oh, crap. By the way, he becomes the Pope. And you're like, oh.
And he does. Historically, Rodrigo Borgia really did become the Pope. That's a topic for another day.
And the thing is, back to history. Historically speaking, Rodrigo Borgia was a terrible Pope. So they're not upsetting anybody when they say, yeah, we're making the Pope the bad guy. Because I can imagine Catholics going, well, Rodrigo, yeah, I'm for that.
Well, the thing is, Rodrigo was... Here's the thing. I liked him more before he was Pope. Because in Brotherhood, he kind of takes a backseat.
Yeah, I know, but we're just talking about Assassin's Creed 2.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because
but his design, his look, his voice.
Oh, whoever did his voice did amazing.
He creeps you the hell out, which I really like. But he takes everything seriously. Excellent villain. Top tier villain. I cannot downplay how excellent these characters are.
Yeah, well...
I can't think of one character I ever looked at and just went...
Well, the best part about these villains is not only are they memorable, there's also it's like in say games and some future games, you will take down Templars or whatever enemy you're going after, and they don't know you don't know them, they're completely forgettable. But the thing is, like, as you're going around, you can hear them go like, "Is the assassin coming? I think the assassin's coming." Like there's a genuine fear, like they acknowledge that you've hurt their allies and that they're probably next, and just seeing them sort of freak out, that's kind of, it brings in, it increases your immersion. And back on the memorability factor, that's one of the beautiful things about seeing Rodrigo everywhere in the game. It cements, this is the main bad guy. You're going to eventually stick around. Something good's going to come around. Whereas like in later games, I can remember just about every single main Templar you would kill in Assassin's Creed 2. But for the life of me, there are some of the later Assassin's Creed games, I could not save my life and tell you who the main bad guy was.
Yeah.
Like, Unity in particular, it's like,
who was the bad guy?
He was the guy with the sword. Dang it.
He was one of those French assholes.
If my life was on the line, I'd be doing, the short drop and a sudden stop.
All right, so now let's move on from the historical and go into the modern. So Lucy and Desmond are back, and they get some well-needed personality upgrades. I feel like Lucy definitely gets some more to do, because she proves herself to be kind of a badass in a fight and kind of clever. She helps Desmond escape Abstergo. They get out, and they manage to escape and get to their little hideaway. She gets some well-needed personality moments. She shows a weaker, more vulnerable side to herself at certain moments, like when she breaks down over hearing that some other assassin cells are being destroyed. Desmond gets some personality because he decides officially, I'm going to join the Assassins, I'm going to help you guys out, so he gets some personality, he gets some good moments. But what really changes here is we get the introduction of Rebecca and Sean.
Lucy, you made it. God, it's been so long. 7 years, can you believe it?
Indeed. Welcome back. So this must be the infamous Subject 17. Desmond Miles, was it?
Who are you?
I'm sorry, where are my manners? I'm Sean Hastings. This is Rebecca Crane.
Nice to meet you, Desmond.
Right, well, it's been lovely chatting, but if you don't mind, Desmond, it's best we get straight to work. Time is precious. Doubly so these days.
And we don't get enough of their history in this game to truly understand their stakes or their goals or why they joined, but we get enough to understand who they are. Like Rebecca. Rebecca is a mechanical wizard. She's the one who built the Animus 2.0, or Baby as she calls it. She's kind of got a plucky, perky personality, kind of a spunky tomboy character. She's fun to listen to, fun to talk to. I actually enjoy hearing her talk because she's usually very engaging. And then you got Sean, who's the history whiz. He's the one basically keeping track of the code of the index, he's the one who will give you information and say, okay, so here's what you need to know about this place, here's what you need to know about this character. He's the one who will give you the little videos about the bad guys you're going to be fighting. And he's got a lot of British smarm and sass combined with a lot of intellectual power, which puts him at odds with everyone, but he means well, which I can like. Yeah, the way I would describe Sean is he's an asshole, but he's a lovable asshole.
At least in this game.
Yeah, I know how you feel about him in Assassin's Creed 3.
We'll get to that later.
We'll get to that later. But I would say that for this game at least, all the characters feel well done. The only one that I miss, and he only shows up for like a brief moment in the end, is Warren Vidic. I miss him. I miss him and his over-the-top, oh, Mr. Miles, I don't think you understand. I miss that campness that he had.
Indeed.
Well, Mr. Miles.
Don't worry, he will be back.
Oh, thank God. But anyway, so I gave characters an S. So if y'all aren't keeping track, because I know we've been at this for a while, we'll wrap it up now. Story, S tier. Fantastically done. History, A tier. Minor issues here and there, but nothing really bad until we get to the end with the Isu showing up. That kind of dropped it a tier for me. Gameplay, S tier. Excellent upgrade all around. It took what the original gave us and bumped it up to the top. And then characters, again, S tier. They're very memorable. In later games, you may forget some of the targets you go after. In this one, though, you know each one of them by face and by name most of the time. Even if you don't remember your names, you'll usually remember going after them. You'll remember how you took them down. You'll remember what steps they took. Like, I may not remember the guy's name. I think his name was Emilio. He's the one who took out the Doge. And then you had to... No, he wasn't that. That was the one you had to sneak in and take out because he was messing up the Merchants Guild. It was the other guy, Silvio, I think, who you had to fly in on the flying contraption and kill because he was going to take out the Doge. And then you got...
That's right. Assassin's Creed Renaissance Airborne Division.
Yeah, and then you got Marco, who looks like the Cowardly Lion if he got a little older. And his... you remember these characters. Francesco de Pazzi, Vieri de Pazzi being voiced by Sasuke. That's ideal casting.
This is like, if you ever wanted to kill Sasuke, I have been waiting for this my entire life.
And then, of course, Bartolomeo and Mario. So, all in all, I gave this game, and if you disagree, Lark, I gave this game an S. I think it's top tier, easily one of the best, if not the best, Assassin's Creed game ever released.
Yep. This, I agree. This is probably this is S tier. It's arguably the best Assassin's Creed game ever because unlike other good Assassin's Creed games, this is undoubtedly an Assassin's Creed game.
For sure.
And it also, in real life, not only furthered my love of history, but it also convinced me to take a semester's worth of Italian in college, which may have been a bad thing in hindsight, but I still loved it.
In either case, I think we'll wrap it up there. Thank you guys so much for watching this one. This one was much longer than our first one, but we had just so much more to talk about. Hope you guys enjoyed. I'm currently working on Assassin's Creed Brotherhood, and we'll have that video out for you as soon as we can. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in our next video.
Take care, guys.
To see it. As for your mother, once I've dealt with you, I promise I'll give her my full attention.